Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, June 2nd, 2023, and this is episode 754 of Living Free in Tennessee, and it is a Homestead Happenings day today. So we'll be talking about everything that's going on the Holler Homestead, not getting hijacked by a redneck today. That was 2 weeks ago. Anyway, it's basically early summer here, even though it's late spring. We've got a few more weeks until it's officially summer, but it's summer. The plants have told me it's summer, so it's summer. We've got chicken processing class coming up this month. Lots to do in advance of that. More babies than we know what to do with, and more on the way. And a garden update. Lots of dry weather and other things to talk about today. Before we jump into that, I want to talk about our highlighted event of today's episode, and that is June 17th. In Camden, Tennessee, at the Special Operations Equipment Compound. John Willis with Chris Watkins is hosting a chainsaw event. And they're going to talk all about how to handle chainsaws safely. If you've never used a chainsaw, it might be worth going to. It includes lunch. It's on the 17th. If you are coming from out of town, you can arrive Friday evening and camp on compound, do the class, and then head home. I think this is one of those classes that I wish I had when I was learning how to use a chainsaw, because it can be scary to use a chainsaw and not know how, right? And that's something that, like, if you bounce back in your face, not good. I'm sure he'll talk about all the safety and a whole bunch of other things. Check that out at originalsoegear.com. It's front and centered there. Also wanted to thank our sponsors of today's show. Sponsor number one is the Homestead Consultant. That's Ryan Steva over at thehomesteadconsultant.com. He's put together quite a cool package where he sits with you, sets up the concepts for your homestead to make a roadmap about how you can roll things out one thing at a time so that you don't lose your mind. And I just did the Smart Homesteading webinar last night where we put together sort of big picture what you want to then back out your homestead plan. Ryan Steve is a great guy to have out to do a consultation, help you figure out what to do next, and he can support you along the way. More information on that is at thehomesteadconsultant.com. If you mention LFTN, you can get a free 20-minute consultation from him. Sponsor number two today is agoristaxadvice.com. Agorist Tax Advice is run by a fellow named Matthew Sursley, where if you've been to some of our events, you've met him in person. He's a smart dude, and he has background in real estate law, rentals, end-of-life planning, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he can help you analyze how your finances are now, what options you have for structuring your world legally, expenses that you can take, how to track them properly, so that and any risks associated with different pieces of that, so you can decide how to best structure your finances to keep more of the money you earn. Money I never earned is fence post money. We're not talking about that. It's the money you earn, how to track that so that if you do get an audit, you know what's up and you pay the government less money. Because if you're going to earn it, you might as well keep it. That's over at agoristaxadvice.com. agoristaxadvice.com/LFTN if you want to schedule a free consultation with Matthew. If you want to send me a question or comments, you can do that, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, those come to me. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that's forage. This is what we're finding out and about. I will say that 75 hard has me out and about more, which is good. So I'm seeing the forage more as it happens. And honeysuckle is out. Honeysuckle is a vine, and the flowers, if you like bite the end off and suck in on them, you get a sweet flavor on your mouth, which is really awesome when you're not having any refined sugar, which I'm not right now. So honeysuckles are out. People make honeysuckle wine. They make honeysuckle jellies and jams. Not jam, but jelly. And they're they're beautiful. They're fragrant. And I just have fond memories growing up as a kid, like sucking on the little flowers for sweetness. And I just noticed that they're out and about. The last wild rose harvest is today. I'm pretty sure I don't see any more coming until the fall when the rosehips are available. So what will happen now, the flowers have broken off and it makes rosehips. The wild rosehips are about the size of a pea in our area. They're like tiny. And then I also have Rosa rugosa in my yard, so that makes bigger rose hips. I'm looking forward to my first rose hip harvest at this place this year. I had a lot of trouble getting roses established here, which is funny because I was the rose whisperer in Portland, Oregon, city of roses. Go figure, they're easy to grow there. They were less easy to grow here. And I'm really looking forward to actually getting rose hips this year. The ones I had that had survived were not rose varieties that produced rose hips. Daylilies are blooming, so the flowers are beautiful orange. If you have them, verify it is the right kind of daylily to eat, because some things are called daylily that you get in bulbs at the store that are not edible, but mine are, because I found them, foraged them, took the roots out and moved them, and then spread them, and now I have daylilies that are wild here, but they're not wild. They're purposefully planted daylilies. Anyway, they taste radishy, peppery, kind of like nasturtium or watercress, and they make a beautiful adornment to any salad. You can put it on. Like right now, we're getting sort of the last of the lettuces, and when that happens, I'll have daylily on it, and then we hopefully soon will transfer over to sort of the hardy spinaches and cucumbers and stuff like that for our salad. So cucumber dill salad is delicious with onions. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. And lots of garlic. Tactical is harvesting seed heads from grasses that he has cultivated and spreading them around to just improve the pasture quality. And in this way, we are not buying pasture seed or seed for our pastures. Although I do have some Timothy seed left. I need to talk to him about using that up, because there's no point in letting it sit around for years. It'll just go bad. But he's harvesting that and filling in areas that look thin. What's really interesting about that is my pond area, which used to just be a bramble gnarl of vines and things. We've had the sheep through it a few times, and it has grasses growing now after that. So ruminants really can help you out. It's about time for wild raspberries to get ripe, although I've not found any yet. I just know timing-wise, this week and next week is traditionally when the wild raspberries have come on, and likewise, the cultivated ones start getting ripe in June. And then we do have, and I see that Strong Roots Resources has also mentioned it, Perilla, the bane of my existence. In the mint family, Perilla, the weed that takes over my garden. Perilla, the thing that nobody eats. The goats don't eat it, the sheep don't eat it, so it gets tall if you let it get tall, and then it takes over the world. Perilla, which is also edible for us. It's a basil look-alike. It doesn't look alike, but taste alike. It doesn't quite taste like it. But you can actually harvest the leaves and chop it up and put it in your saute. And I don't know what the health benefits are of it. I should look those up. Or Strong Roots Resources should totally just send me an email about that, or an audio file, and I'd play it. But it is coming on everywhere. It was funny because he wrote it. It was also on my list because I'm like, well, it's there and it's edible, and I eat 5 to 10 leaves of it every year. I produce hundreds of pounds of Perilla on this property every year, unintentionally. That being said, its roots are pretty shallow, so it's not hard to control in your garden. You just need to get on it when they're little, or else the roots do go deep, and it's not awesome, and it spreads, and if you let it go to seed, you get it everywhere. Next segment is Livestock. This is where we talk about all the critters on the homestead, and I do want to remind those of you in the live feed, if you want me to see your comment, put the first few words in all caps. Otherwise, I assume you are talking among yourselves, and I'm not seeing very well today for some reason. I woke up with a headache. I feel hungover. I did not have any alcohol, of course, because I'm doing 75 hard. But I feel hungover today. I don't know why. I'm trying to drink water. I'll take some electrolytes. It's just weird. But as a result, I'm not seeing very well either. So put those things in all caps. So we have about 28 baby rabbits of different ages, and the eldest of them are ready to become dog food, which is probably happening this weekend. And so it's like the eldest, it's like 10 or 12 that are going to be going that direction. And that means that we can start the raw diet on the LGDs that are living with the sheep. But we're kind of combining that with dog food. And we found a new dog food for the LGDs at the feed store that is the high quality kind, and it costs a little bit less. It's a full 50 pounds. And so pairing that with the rabbits, we'll see what that does to the feed bill. Later in the show, we talk about finances. We have been really looking at how much we spend on external inputs and coming up with ways to reduce that. And the first way was raw diets for dogs, because I spend hundreds of dollars on dog food. And, some of them are pet dogs. But the LGDs are big animals and they eat a lot. And if I can get them on a raw diet then that we're producing here, then that's awesome. So the way we do that is we're unaliving the rabbits and cutting them in half, but leaving everything there and freezing them, except for the ones that we're going to use that day, and giving each dog a half. We just have to trade halves. And one of the things about raw diet with dogs that I learned from Joel Riles is they eat the intestines, and that's partially how they get their vitamins, because there's half digested grass in there, there's liver, there's organ meat, and it's important to give them the whole animal. And somebody on the Facebook user says, rounds of the keto flu, fight. Yeah, it could be the keto flu, although I've been keto for like 45 days right now, so I don't know why it came today, but I ate vegetables yesterday, some vegetables. We had a saute from the garden. No, we had a salad. We had we'll talk about that in the food area. I'm going to talk about salad specifically. And then we are breeding another rabbit. So I've got the 2 does that we have on a 4 times a year cycle. We'll see how that goes. It's about to be too hot for the males to not be shooting blanks. So the female rabbit who's ready to breed went in with a male today, and hopefully that'll be, the last litter until fall, unless we get lucky and it's not super extremely hot. But the males start shooting blanks and over a certain temperature. We're getting up to 91 degrees today, which is, I think it's 86 over which they start shooting blanks. I may have that number wrong. So if somebody knows it, just throw it in the comments and I will say it. But yeah, so that is another thing. So we've had 3 litters from the gray one, and this is our second litter from the black one. And I actually stagger them out so we don't have all the babies born at the same time. And we're thinking about if we want to add does right now, like if I was ramping up hard for 100% raw food for all the dogs, we would need a few more does. But the good news is we're starting with the LGDs and seeing how that goes. And then I'll probably start augmenting my dogs and Tactical's dog, and then we'll just go from there. The baby chickens and ducks I have a new chicken system I'm putting in place that one thing feeds another, right? It's a function stack system. It's sort of the victory garden approach, where I let the chickens deep litter mulch on one side of an area, and I put my compost in there so they can root through that. Hopefully we'll get enough waste in there that we reduce how much external feed we need to put in, and that attracts bugs. And then we end up with the byproducts of eggs and compost and meat. That's all happening starting out of Hollow Roost. That's why Hollow Roost was developed. And we also hatched 9 ducklings, and they are all together brooding in there. The chicks are about a week older than the ducklings. They're about 5 days older than the ducklings. So they're all actually intermingling at this point, because the brooder that we had in there where we had the ducklings is small. It lasts for about a week or 2, and then it's done. So it's time to pull that out. We have them out of that brooder now. It's time to pull that out, scrub it up, bleach it for the next round of baby birds. But they're looking really good. We lost 2 of the breasts, 1 to a broken leg in shipment, and the other one it got slow and died. And that happens sometimes in small animals. The 9 chicks that came successfully out of the incubator, ducks, they're looking great. They still appear to be all female. I'm not going to call it yet, though. I'll let you know in another week if I see traits of male coming out, but I may have ended up brooding 100% female ducks, which is not bad because those are our egg layers, right? So that's all doing well. And then the meat birds, some of them are looking big enough to process, and they're eating a lot of food. Our class, our 6th annual chicken processing class, is June 24th. $95 gets you the class, lunch, my guide to poultry processing, and you go home with your chicken that you processed. That is here at the Holler Homestead, an hour east of Nashville. It's livingfreeintennessee.com to sign up for that class. Anyway, that class is June 24th, which is 3 weeks from now. And I have a few seats left. Also, I'm not going to feed birds that are ready to process for another 3 weeks just to process all 50 birds at that class, because we'll need about 25 birds for that class to show how to process them so that every student gets one. And then we show how to properly cut a chicken into parts, from whole chicken to parts. So you can see, we show you how to debone a chicken. And then we talk about like recipes you might want to use, how pasture raised meat behaves a little bit differently. We talk about food safety. Chef Brett is co-teaching the class with me. It's going to be a really good time. And so we need a few more birds than we have students in the class, in essence. We do walk you through everything from unaliving the bird to packaging it up safely. And you, as I said, you go home with your bird. I'm going to process ones that are ready to process early so that I don't feed them for another 3 weeks. And that is a financial decision. So I'm going to take a good hard look at those birds this weekend. I haven't actually, this week has been a huge catch-up week from being out of town at Fighting Pistol in Camden. And I have I've been head down, like Tactical has been all in on livestock, and I've been heads down on getting ready for things we needed to produce just from a Nicole sauce standpoint, and then keeping up on plants, because my primary responsibility is the gardening, and there's a lot going on at this time of year. So I'm going to take a good hard look at different things on livestock just to get that going, and then maybe segregate out some of those meat birds and schedule a time to process them, so that I think the Holler, like the Eversoles, want to help with that too, and just check it out. But it just depends, because there's a point where like Tactical and I can motor through a couple birds really fast, and if the day is Tuesday that we need to do that, and the Eversoles are working because they have real jobs, then we will we'll just process some birds and get it done. The next segment is grow. And this is a very long list that could have been longer. This is where we talk about what's growing on the homestead, mostly our gardens and aquaponics system. The fish are looking great in my aquaponics system. And when I was in Texas, I managed to acquire some aquatic plants that I had not kept alive over the winter. So they're doing great too. I got them. I babied these plants, got them home straight into the aquaponics system, fed the crap out of the fish so they pee a lot and give nitrogen to the aquatic plants. And so I have water mint that looks really good and a bunch of other stuff. My watercress. So I put watercress in the aquaponics system from the creek about 5 years ago. And I get a little bunch of watercress every year. This year, for some reason, I haven't ever replanted it. It just disappears when it gets hot. This year, I had a full-on, almost 4 foot by 4 foot bed filled with watercress. The only reason it wasn't the whole bed is I also have a comfrey plant in there that I use to look at the quality of the leaves that are coming out of the comfrey plant and see if I have nutrient deficiencies. That was a trick I learned from my buddy David. And so where it was, the watercress did not win that, but I just trimmed that all back because it had gone to flower, and which it's also doing in the creek. And we'll see if it comes back in the fall or not. I left the root matter there, and that system, I am planning to move it or disassemble it after the new aquaponics system gets built. But based on the timeline I'm seeing of projects here, I think we might be going another year without an aquaponics system behind my house. We'll see. I mean, at this point, I might just flatten it out and put the swim spa there. Probably not, but I want to, right? You guys know I totally want to do that. It is time. It has been very dry for the last 10 days or so, and usually we get about an inch of rain a week, which is ideal for gardening. So I did actually run the sprinklers because I don't have my soil retaining as much water as I want it to. I am thinking of adding some biochar to that after learning a bunch about biochar from Jack Spirko this year. And we'll see. I have been adding, I finally got my hands on wood chips to add wood mulch to it, which also helps with the structure of the soil. Right now, that's just being used as mulch to keep weeds down. And I had been waiting for something like Chip Drop or the power company to trim the trees and just do what they always do and give me truckloads of this stuff. And they haven't since 2019. So this year I admitted it may never happen again. And I went out to our wood chip area and hand shoveled all that stuff. We got a truckload and a trailer load. If the weather cooperates, I'm going to do one more load just to have a little bit more stacked up. The cool thing about shoveling your own wood chips in a situation like that is you can go choose the more broken down ones, which is what I did. And it has been working fabulously in the garden. The cool thing about that is with the 10 days of dry, the garden was watered by sprinkler because I don't have a drip system in yet. And I was out of town, and Tactical watered every day I was out of town at Fighting Pistol. I was only gone 2 days. And I came back and I'm like, oh, still no rain. Going to have to water the garden again. And I was like, why don't I check? And I put my finger down in the rows under the wood mulch. And it was the perfect amount of moisture. So I just backed away and left it. And I haven't had to water the garden since, which means if it doesn't rain today or tomorrow, for sure, it's been a week. It's time to water the garden again. And that's awesome because that means that I only have to water the garden once a week when we don't have rain versus every couple of days, because when the soil is exposed to the sun, it just dries out really quickly. And what I'd been doing, I was throwing burlap bags down. I was throwing all sorts of stuff, and nothing quite works as well, in my opinion, as wood chips. I know straw works well too. I am leery of buying straw because I don't want to accidentally get straw with glyphosate or other weed retardants in it that then impact my plants. And I'm too lazy to do the experiment where you make water from the straw and water bean seeds with it and see if it retards their growth before you use the straw. I'm like, that's way too much work when I can just go get tree mulch that is very unlikely to have any glyphosate at all in it because it was up high and people don't usually spray that on trees. I mean, it might have gotten some cross spray, but by the time it's broken down, I'm not worried about it. That being said, and speaking of trees, it's time for our first fodder tree harvest of the year. I actually wonder if John Willis is getting into his too, because his fodder trees are about the same age as mine. My hybrid poplar, I did not pollard them last year, which means to cut them off up high so that they bush out, and then they give you more tree hay basically for your livestock. I had Nick Ferguson look at them last fall, and I'm like, is it time yet? Is it time yet? He said, I can get a little bit bigger around, and I did. And so it's time to do those. And the hybrid poplar are putting shoots down low as well. And I can do two things with that. One, I can cut them off down low and feed them to my livestock. Or two, I can cut them off down low and put them in soil and make more hybrid poplar. I will have a meeting with Tactical this weekend about big picture homestead stuff when we set our schedule for the next week. And I'm going to ask him if he wants more hybrid poplar or if I should feed them to the goats and the sheep and the rabbits. And I will make that decision. So I'm going to do my best to get a video of what we're doing with that, just so you can see how that works. We're also making a video about something. Oh, we're going to make compost tea. So there's a compost tea video coming as well. Because I've never made compost tea from worm castings, and Tactical's going to show me how. And he was like, well, we should make a video about that. And I said, yes, we should, because other people have probably not done that ever. See, I've been homesteading more than 15 years, and I've never made compost tea with worm castings. There's always something new to learn, guys, as a homesteader. Strawberries. I have June-bearing strawberries are my favorite out of all the varieties I have. And June-bearing strawberries bear strawberries in May in Tennessee. I think it's June in Oregon. That's when I would have started strawberry picking when I was a kid. I picked strawberries for Smuckers in Oregon as a kid. Mom had to lie about my age, so I was allowed to work. That's what we did back then in the old days in the country. Strawberries are slowing down. So I've gotten like a good harvest, probably a pint of them every 2 days since they started really pumping up. And 2 days ago, I got like a handful, and I'll throw them on salads or just eat some or give them away. And I noticed that I had a few more flowers out and some fruit that looked like it needed to ripen, but I think we're coming towards the end of that. I don't know if this variety does a second harvest in the fall. We'll see. But with that, I am going to, so I have two varieties of strawberry. One is an alpine strawberry, and we think it's an alpine strawberry, and one are these June bearing that I got from Ryan Steva, both prolific. I don't love the alpine flavor, so I think it'd be better for strawberry jam, which I'm not going to make because you add sugar to that. And then you have jars of jam that you don't use if you don't eat jam very much. So I think I can go through one small jelly jar of jam a year about, because of my dramatic reduction of refined sugars in my diet. That's just me. So, and then I'll make some for Mama Sauce because she puts it on her, on things sometimes. She'll make biscuits or something or cornbread and put it on that. Don't ooh me about that. Cornbread with jam is delicious. It's delicious. So I decided not to make strawberry jam I also don't like strawberry jam very much. I like blackberry jam. I like peach jam. Strawberry jam is not my favorite. It's the one everybody else, it's too sweet for me. So the alpine berries are more aggressive about spreading, but the June bearing are more like tasty. I really like them. So I'm going to separate or thin out the June bearing once the berries stop. And then I'm going to transplant them other places in my food forest area / orchard. And I will baby them this summer with water because like transplanting right now is a little late, but the way that strawberries propagate is they put a runner out and they make another plant. And if you just let that all become a gnarl, by next year, if you don't thin them, you don't get as many strawberries, and they'll kind of choke themselves out a little bit. So it's totally worth thinning them out, spreading them where I want them. I will let y'all know if extra plants available. I also got a second variety of strawberry that I know nothing about at Lowe's because the flowers were red, because that's how I make my decisions. It's totally emotional. I like red. See, I'm wearing my red shirt today. And the strawberries had red flowers, so I bought them. Yep. I am that shallow. I am that person. The other thing that's happening on the garden, I finally have a year where I have an awesome Swiss chard harvest happening. And if you look in the thumbnail for today's episode, you'll see a picture of a basket that has a lot of Swiss chard and lettuces and a nasturtium flower. Those are all out of the garden. I got peas and I got broccoli for the first time. Like, I've gotten very, like, golf ball sized broccoli heads before. This was more like baseball sized ones. I only raised 5 broccoli plants because I love broccoli, and I'd like to have 100 heads of broccoli a year. No, actually, how many would I like? I would really like about 25 to 40 heads of broccoli of the size you get in the grocery store. I've never successfully gotten broccoli that large in Tennessee. I have in Oregon, but not in Tennessee. And what happens is it gets hot and they want to bolt. The cabbage worms come and get into them. So I've had a lot of issues with broccoli. And then I'll try again this fall. I never get off my butt soon enough to start the seedlings to transplant the broccoli for fall plants. So this year I got baseball size. So we are improving. One of them was softball size and it was delicious. And I just cut the broccoli heads off and left the plant. And we'll see if I get a second cutting. So what broccoli does when you cut the head off is it puts little smaller shoots out that have longer stems and you get more broccoli. So assuming the oven stays at bay just a little bit longer, we might get a second harvest of that. My cabbages are small this year and getting just eaten up by bugs. I have some wood vinegar. I'm going to try spraying on them and see if that helps with that problem. We'll see. That's an experiment. The only thing I know that's worked successfully here for keeping the cabbage worms at bay is row cover, and I didn't do that. We are getting the last round of lettuce. So the lettuce in my aquaponics system that I planted in early April that we could have totally harvested for the workshop, and we did some of it. That's all gone. I have them cut and just laying down on the soil to get eaten by the worms. And I had started some lettuce seedlings kind of late. They were still in seedling form at the April workshop. I transplanted those about 3 weeks ago to my sunshine plot garden, which is above my house. And those are doing great. I have them mulched in really nice, and they're starting to get big. Like, I went through this week, and because each head of lettuce was really like 5 heads of lettuce, because you never just get one seed in there, right? I thinned out all the little ones, took off some leaves from the outside, and hopefully I'll get some actual heads of lettuce before it gets too hot. Same thing here happens. The oven turns on in Tennessee, and then the lettuce goes to seed. And unless you're growing varieties like, I think it's called lamb's tongue, that is more heat resistant, it's just really hard to grow lettuce in the summer. And at that point, in Tennessee, you can grow it inside, or you can just Eat what's coming off your garden. I do the second thing. I start having, salads made out of Malabar spinach. Jack gave me something, I think it's called Forever spinach or something. Very easy to propagate. That one is supposed to be heat hardy too, so I'll give it a go. Cucumbers are coming on, and the nasturtiums stay for a while. I'll start adding basil leaves to the salads that we have, and it's just a transition to a different kind of salad. I probably won't be getting corn this year from the farmer's market if the farmer's market really has died. I'm going to actually go to the farmer's market tomorrow and see if we have some farmers back. We'll see. The tomato wall is looking great. So those of you who listen a long time know that I started my tomato starts late this year. And they were about 3 inches tall when I put them outside about a week and a half ago. And then I had some big plants that my friend Carly gave to me because I only started 12 tomato plants. And, not all of them germinated. So I had like 6 tomato plants. I had some of every variety I wanted. And she's like, I only have about 6. And I'm like, well, usually I grow 20 to 30 tomato plants, but I'll just do 12 and I'll do it in front of the kitchen window and it'll be fine. And then I ended up with 50 tomato plants from my friend. So we're full here. I gave some to John Willis to grow there. I gave some to whoever walked by and wanted to plant for about a week. And that is what it is. The tomato plants are 2 feet tall now, and I have my first flowers. I think from flower to ripe tomato is about 4 to 5 weeks. So we're looking at July when we get tomatoes. I didn't push it early this year, but that's reasonable for me. And I have been growing them with aspirin, and I so far, knock on wood, don't have blight issues out front. I've seen a little bit of blight in Sunshine Plot where I also have put tomatoes in the soil. I'm going to put some more aspirin up there, and those are plants from my friend, and she did not start them with aspirin. So what I did is I saw one with blight, and it had a sucker coming out the side that did not have blight. Cut it off, put aspirin around, and we'll see how that goes. I'll report back on that as those plants go. If they look blighty, man, I'm just going to rip them out because I don't want the blight here. And last year we had a relatively decent blight-free year. I would like to keep it that way. I am slowly managing the food forest. When we put the food forest in, Nick asked me how many hours a day I wanted to put in on maintaining it, and I said up to an hour a week. Otherwise, I won't do it. And I haven't. And there are weeds. And the reason there are weeds is we disturb the soil and the pioneer plants are coming. So what I'm doing is managing what pioneer plants win and which ones lose. And I'm putting some of my own pioneer plants in that I want there that would not naturally come out of the soil. And it's manageable right now. Some of my trees are showing a little bit of blight, which we get here. And I need to decide what to do about that because I'm not going to put a chemical on them. So I may try a garlic pepper spray. I might try the wood vinegar spray, which is the new miracle solution to everything now. You know that it's not a miracle solution, right? But that's what everybody's talking about this year. So we'll see how it goes. I have harvested peppermint is exploding everywhere, particularly my I have apple mint. Like apple mint will never die here, just from like 2 plants that Kenesh left here years ago. And I got 1 chocolate mint plant last year, and it got about the size of a basketball last year. And then winter came and it went away. When it came back, it's coming up in all the rock cracks for my rock wall, which is great. That's what I want there and not other weird weeds. And it's taken over a whole giant patch. Like I have to pull it back from other plants so that other plants grow. So I harvested a 1/4 bushel of that, and it's drying. And I have harvested my first round of tarragon. So I have a ton of tarragon. If anybody needs dried tarragon, I'm going to have extra this year. And as long as those plants continue to survive, it'll be way more than I've ever had because they're coming back where they were. And then the echinacea is getting bigger every year. And I can harvest some of those leaves and dry them, which you can use as echinacea tea. And then you also use the flowers. You can use the roots too. Like all of it can be used. Garlic scapes have happened. Usually within about 2 weeks of the garlic scapes happening, it's time to harvest the garlic. I'll check on that in another week. When the leaves start dying back is when you start checking and you see if it's bulbed out. And if it hasn't, then you give it a little bit more time to bulb out. And if it never does, that is what it is. You lost the lottery this year. We got cold enough this year that it should, though. Next up is Harvest Meals, where we talk about what we're eating seasonally on the homestead or from our stored foods. And I wanted to tell you the story of the salad and the saute that happens. This time of year, from a harvest cooking standpoint, I spend more time cooking when I'm going to cook from the garden unless I have prepared. And it's for the following reason. It starts with, what's the main dish? Usually a meat-based thing. Last night, that was a smoked pork butt that had been going for about 24 hours. What would I like to go with this? I don't know. What do we have in the garden or the fridge? I look in the fridge, nothing there. I take my harvest basket and I start at the top of the hill where Sunshine Plot is. And I go to the peas. And if there's peas available, I harvest them. And if I want some pea shoots for a salad, I harvest those. And then I go to the Swiss chard area and the broccoli area. And I wander through the garden and I pick stuff. And then I come down to my aquaponics system and I do the same thing. And then I look around places I know where stuff is growing wild. And what we ended up with this week, salad-wise, was lettuce, peas, Swiss chard, broccoli. I found some lamb's quarter, which I should have totally mentioned in the forage section. So lamb's quarter is just growing. And once lamb quarter starts growing, it just keeps growing. It like propagates itself. Some people find that annoying. It's delicious. It's got sort of a nutty, buttery taste on the young leaves. So I harvested some of those young leaves. And then the nasturtium had given me flowers. So I took all those things, washed them, turned them into a salad, made a homemade salad dressing, which if you haven't ever made homemade salad dressing, I do have an episode from way back about how to make salad dressing that you should totally listen to, because once you start making homemade salad dressing, you'll never go back, and it's healthier than the crap you get at the store. And then once that was done, I dressed the top with nasturtium flowers and some sauerkraut that we had. And that salad was delicious. And then I made a saute it was just Swiss chard, garlic scapes that I had harvested a few days before and put in the fridge, onions and spices. I used the Italian spice that Honeybee's Kitchen puts out with some salt. Really simple dishes, and they were delicious. And then because we've been cooking large hunks of meat, so venison roast and pork butt, I'm making a bone broth. I'm starting it today in the crock pot, which I'm not doing anything fancy, guys. I'm just throwing it in the crock pot with onions and some other things, like some vegetable matter, making bone broth to drink, because what I'm finding is I produce so much bone broth that we can't use it all in cooking. And so now it's just something we drink. And that gets you all that good collagen from the bones. And it's a great way to take the edge off. Like this morning, I probably should have made myself some bone broth instead of coffee, because I had that headache when I woke up. Probably would have made me feel better. I didn't do it. But now that I've said it in my out loud voice, when I go eat, which I think I'm doing a cup of bone broth that's already made for myself, because that might actually help with the situation with my keto flu or whatever's going on. Next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community, and this is where we talk about what's going on in the community. So I went to gun class at Tactical Response, and I had been putting it off for 3 years. I knew I needed to take it. I'm going to do a debrief episode on Monday about that. That's going to be Monday's topic. And I have video out of me in the class that we will start putting out. I've only sent a couple to people privately. And the reason I didn't go for 3 years is that I wanted to be more proficient with my gun before I got there. And I always thought, hey, I'll do this class right around Self-Reliance Festival. And then, like, really, guys, I'm super tired after that. That was stupid. And I was a little bit intimidated by the class. I had taken the medical class, the first responder, I don't know what it's called. It's immediate action medical. And that was a big class for me. Like, there was a lot of mindset stuff that got addressed in that class. And I learned how to do a lot of cool things, but it was also a lot of like physically challenging class. And so then I'm like, it's going to be even more physically challenging to take fighting pistol. And I identified earlier this year something in my mindset that needs to change, and started 75 hard as one of the tools towards making that change in myself. And probably 3 days after I started 75 hard, I was like, there's this thing I've needed to do for 3 years. I have all the supporters in the world willing to help me make sure this class happens. And I haven't taken advantage of that because of my own brain getting in my way. And so I looked at the calendar and I chose what I didn't know at the time was Memorial Day weekend, but it was. And I took the class and I went on the podcast and I said, anybody who has been hesitant to take this class, I'll be there. We can hang out. And Steve, my neighbor, decided to take the class too. It was great to have a friend at the class for like after hours stuff and just to talk through, like we had to do homework on one night and that sort of thing. So that was awesome. And having it be a hauler neighbor means that I decided we should make some changes I was like, hey, now that I've taken the class, we should put some changes in our gun range that we have here. And he's like, yep, totally. And because he's also been through the class and seen sort of the exercises they pull you through, it was really helpful for me to understand how to practice at home and tangible steps I can take to and things I want to improve. It was not as physically demanding as the immediate action medical class, first of all, or mentally taxing. And by the end of that class, I'm very comfortable with pistols of multiple kinds. And I'm saying that because if you have been hesitant to take that class, tactical response is a great place to take the class. Having a buddy with you is very cool, although not necessary. I will be doing Girl Gun Weekend. I think Labor Day weekend is when I'm going to do it. And we'll do some shared Airbnbs and stuff and have meal plans for cooking healthy and eating well. And for people who are female listening to my podcast and have been hesitant about their firearms, this is a time you can travel to Camden and you won't be staying alone in the middle of nowhere. You'll be staying with a group of us. So think about that. I will announce more details when I have confirmed that weekend works for tactical response, because if we get 6 to 10 students added to that class, they need to make sure their staffing is available to do that. So just put a pin in that until I have confirmed with them. Coyote hunting is in the works. We have had a large coyote making itself visible during the day, which is not a good sign. And I have been watching the scat pattern on my morning walks, and it's been eyeing chickens and it's been eyeing livestock. And while the livestock guarding dogs are prepared to deal with this threat, I know that one hauler neighbor has already tried to nab him or her a couple of times. We're going to have a talk about it this weekend about how much more effort we want to put in. I think we have a coyote call that might be useful, but we have to decide where we want the location to be and then who wants to be involved and get the word out to other neighbors in case they hear shooting at night, which is when it's usually when you hunt coyotes. But like this one, like 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, you'll see it on the road wandering around. Tactical says it doesn't look rabid, but I wonder if it has something off about it because it's a weird time. And we don't want that disease spreading to any of our animals either if it has one. So, yeah. Wile E. Coyote gotta go because Wile E. Coyote will eat chickens and rabbits and sheep and cats and small dogs and all of the things. And I'm fine with them being back in the woods. I'm not fine with them being on my homestead. And then we did the smart homesteading webinar last night, which I know some of you here were on it, and it went great. I mean, I expected it to go well, but it went really well. And it is the kickoff of a new 7-part webinar series with 3 instructors, which is called the Homestead Startup Kit. It's a starter pack. And it's 7 webinars on different topics that are useful to a homesteader. The first one's going to be how to grow your garden successfully in year 1. And then we build from there on other homestead skills you may want to build. So keep your eye on the LF10 email that will have more information about the starter pack. If you want to read the initial things about it, you go to NicoleSauce.com and it is up there right now. But the cool thing that happened was people were talking to each other during the webinar. And, at the end of the webinar, it's clear what the next steps are to get your plan together, but I don't think it's possible to write a really good vision and purpose statement for your homestead in 1 hour, right? Or 2 hours. Like, you need some iterations. You need to evaluate if this is a good fit. You need to run it by your family. You need to run it by your friends. And so people have the skeleton of how to do it, but may want to run their ideas and their concepts by other people. So we launched a separate group for them to give each other feedback over on Telegram so that they can keep the momentum working forward. And I have this under community because that's how you build community. I think especially people new to homesteading feel alone very often. Like, we had questions about, how do I find my homesteading community? And the thing is, it's usually out there in any location. You just have to find it. And just finding it is just in air quotes, because sometimes it's right there in your face and you see it. And other times you're like, I have no idea where the other homesteaders are. I'm all alone. I'm the only one who cares about organic growing. I'm the only one who knows what permaculture is. I'm the only one who knows how to build self-reliance. And then as you get out and take classes, you're like, oh, this person teaching cheese making is also a prepper. Sweet, we can talk. And so we had that conversation too. Next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we're building on the homestead. We had another wave of kitchen forward momentum. So Ryan Steva, and he sealed up. My ceiling has had a hole from the attic to the kitchen that just had plastic over it since we wrapped up before the spring workshop. So he filled that in with some drywall. We got the last piece of drywall up on one of my other walls that I was like, let's just not mess with that because timeline. And we are now setting the foundation to do the last of the kitchen remodel phase 1. And it will be, I'm going to put some coins in a jar for a while before I go to phase 2. We'll just put it that way. So that is great. The only problem is I now have a pile of kitchen things in my living room again, which is disconcerting. And I'm not putting them back till the drywall is sanded and painted. And then I can be like, okay, this is how I can hang my pots and where I can hang my pots and those sorts of things. The only other thing left to do at that point will be to install the hood over the stove, which I have to decide which hood to buy. And then that'll be done. And I will be super happy about that. Those of you who came to my spring workshop know that we put a solar array in to run part of the cabin and the pump house, and it worked, but I had an electrical issue in my pump house that was causing the inverter to reset itself. We addressed that. So Matt came out from, what's the name of your company, Matt? Yikes. Something with, somebody write it in the notes and I'll say it later. So anyway, Matt, electrician, came out, helped us troubleshoot that. And so my pump house was not properly grounded, and he changed out a breaker there. So with those changes and some other things, we are now able to run the water on solar. I am keen to see how the electrical bill changes. Senior Chief Electrical, for those of you in the Upper Cumberland area, Senior Chief Electrical is scheduled several months out, but he does some fantastic work. Anyway, that's the name. I don't know why I can't think of Senior Chief when I'm under pressure on a live stream like that, but there we go. That's my issue. I know exactly who it is when I see it. So very excited about that. And I'm very happy that we thought it might be a coil in the well pump. It's not. So it was less expensive to pay Matt to do wiring than it was to replace the well pump. So I won yesterday. Tactical's been making with shovels runoff adjustments to keep more of the water on property when it rains. And he's doing that because he heard me last year say that I think the drought line is moving, like it appears that the drought line is moving east across the United States, and we may end up in a dry cycle here. And if we do, then we can't count on that 1 inch of rain every week in the summer, which I already know we can't. And so he's looking at ways to keep more of the water on the property soaked into the soil. And that's a combination of some of massaging of the landscape here, as well as soil development. Like the better the soil is at retaining water, the more water stays here for the plants, the more abundantly we can grow off of what falls out of the sky. And then it's time to do the final push on the perimeter fence so that we are a closed loop system, and we are working on how we're going to schedule that out. Last segment before we transition to the Q&A part of the show, and I have one question queued up. If you have any question at all about this show or anything else you want us to address, put the first few words in all caps and I will star them, and we will do that in the second part of the live stream. Finances. This is where we talk about the money part of the homestead. And I asked Tactical, I'm like, so what's up with finances? He's like, everything costs money. And I'm like, okay, I know it's stressful right now, but it's not out of scope of what costs money on the homestead right now. We are buying feed for meat birds, and they're going through a lot of feed. And the sooner we get them processed, the less that's a problem. But we are not buying food for us. 100% of the meals that I've been cooking for the last month, for sure, have been stuff I've stored or stuff that's already here or stuff that's coming off the land. And that is a hidden benefit. So while we do have feed costs, if we think of them like the grocery bill, it's still like a couple $100 a month. I don't know how many hundreds of dollars right now. But it is a $0 grocery bill for humans at this point. And we're about to reduce the feed bill of the dogs with rabbits. So like all in all, while that's not income, what that is awesome. And the only place I'm spending money, and usually it's trade money and sometimes it's cash money, is that we are using all of our eggs to make more ducks, to make more egg futures. And I'm buying eggs from friends in the network. So from the Eversoles and from Trisha, I have been buying their pasture raised eggs because I'm not going to eat store eggs, and I am going to eat eggs. And if they weren't here, I would be eating my powdered eggs because I have some freeze dried eggs I could eat as well. But since they have fresh eggs, I'm buying their eggs, which is awesome. Anyway, this time of year on the homestead, we just talked for 52 minutes about what's up on the homestead in 1 week. It's a lot. And other times of year, this show is like half an hour long because it's not a lot. This time of year, between now and about mid-July, I feel like it is the homestead race. You've got baby animals to deal with and to process. You've got your gardens exploding. You got to keep up on weeds. Preservation starts, and there's an overlap there. There is a production slowdown for me, usually from mid-July to the end of August, where I keep up on preserving. New stuff isn't really like germinating right. So if I start new plants, they're inside. But between now and mid-July, man, it's a race. And it can feel really, really overwhelming. And I think it's important to keep your sanity. And I just say that because we did the homesteading workshop. That highlighted green thing on my to-do list is take a long bath. If you're going to get any time to relax or to reset, the only way you get it right now on a homestead is you just do it. Janet, who was on here earlier, I don't know if she's still here, had a weird day on the homestead where things were going wrong and she had a fall but didn't get hurt, and she decided to read a book for a while. The work will still be there. And if you don't do things perfectly, as long as you take care of the no-kill list, you're fine. So as long as things aren't dying that you don't want dying, and I'll tell you this, I will let some plants die in favor of keeping myself healthy enough not to give myself shingles or get myself sick. I'll let some plants die. I just don't let the animals die if I can help it. It's okay. There is always at this time of year more to do than there are hours in the day. Janet says it was a good book. Excellent. And the only person who can control your schedule that's frantic is you. And so remember to build in that kayak trip with your family while the weather's nice, or take a long bath, or read a good book, or sit around a bonfire with your buddies on Saturday night, which I understand is happening around here. just do that. Don't forget. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Information on that is at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. So this time there was only one person who thought that was actually the end of the live stream. Welcome back to the live stream show. If Holler neighbors are going to hop on, they should do it. And there they are. We'll go once around the horn, and then I'll start answering any questions we have from the live audience. That means you guys who are still here, get into the comments and ask us questions, or else this is going to be a really short Q&A. I have 2 questions. Steve, how are you? You are mute.
Yeah, I had to mute it because the wife is washing dishes and it was kind of noisy. So
darn it! Getting work done.
Right. Yeah, I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Good. How are those holler roost plans coming?
Good. I mean, I did give him all the measurements that I had taken, and so I haven't heard back from him. But I'm sure it's going to take several days to actually go through and make all those adjustments to the drawings. Yeah, he does good work.
Yep. So it looks like there are going to be holler roost plans available for purchase, guys. Steve, somebody reached out to Steve, and they've been working hard on getting the plans written up, and I think a cut list. I think that'll be really cool. So anyway, Tactical, what's new with you? You're going to have to unmute if you're going to talk.
No, usual. So moving stuff around and trying to plug a hole, and I've just remembered that I've got another hole that I need to plug and some other dirt that I need to move around so that it doesn't flood the pump house again. And
so by plugging holes, you mean putting soil in holes in the ground?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So he's playing in the dirt, guys. That's what he does. Like we talked about that earlier. I mean, shaping the landscape so it retains water.
Or keep the water out.
Yeah, the pump house has been filling with silt from the hillside because of some changes we made, and he's been trying to address that. Okay. First one we have here is from K-Bonk. Do you blend bone types? And this is in reference to the bone broth that I made. And the answer is yes, I do. Sometimes I'll do, like, when we get the cow, I get all of the cow bones, and then I make bone broth, and I give half of it to the person we split the cow with. And that I will do all beef for the beef broth. But in general, unless I have like a pile of chicken backs or something, I do bone broth with whatever bones I have. And I call it multi-broth. I don't really worry about keeping it to one kind of animal or another. And I make it out of venison bones too. So we're going to do venison pork in the crock pot today and have it this weekend. And that's my process. I've never noticed that it tastes bad that way. It's just not purely chicken or purely something else. And we do process through most all of our bones that way. Occasionally I'll be like, I am so overwhelmed with bones and we have so much bone broth that we're just going to compost these. But usually I just make bone broth out of whatever we have. Next question comes from Letty. If someone didn't attend the webinar, the Smart Homesteading webinar, and wants the info on crafting their vision statement and purpose, how can they find it? You can still buy that webinar and download it and watch it. And that is probably the best way to do it. If you want to grab that webinar, go to NicoleSauce.com and scroll down the page, and it's the Smart Homesteading webinar. It is $45. Or if you are a member, log into the membership portal first, and then you know what to do from there. So more than that, I can't say. But it is. I uploaded the video, and let me double check. Hold on. Let me hit done. Okay, now it's available. I uploaded the video before we started the podcast, and it was still uploading during the podcast, but it is now there. It's just the raw video right now. It is not edited, which I am going to do some editing on it for the final product, but I figure linking people to the video as quickly as possible, who are keen to get in on it, is more important than having like a fancy introduction and editing out some of the, things. Like if there's a pause, I can shorten that up a little bit for people. Next question is, do you think it's worth your time to see if the Marina restaurant will give you scraps as part of the chicken system? Possibly. I hadn't thought of that. Like, the reason I don't collect restaurant scraps is I have to drive for 25 to 45 minutes to get them, which then means I have to be in the car for an hour and a half to get them, and probably longer. And that seems like a lot of time, of my time, to go get rest scraps to turn into compost. And so leveraging my scraps here and asking for other scraps around the hauler was like my first idea on the chicken composting system. But yeah, that restaurant is right over the hill. And so if they will, I could just switch out a bucket every couple of days. So that's again, that kind of thing is adding to the processes here. That's something I'm going to want to talk to Tactical about if we want to actually manage that. Because when I'm out of town, guess who has to go get the bucket? Tactical, do you know who has to go get the bucket when I'm out of town?
Yeah, Tactical doesn't like that idea for the sole reason it's one more task.
Yeah, he's feeling task overwhelmed right now. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we're going to wrap this one up. You guys have anything else you want to talk about from a hauler neighbor's perspective? Steve's muted.
I joined in kind of late, but right when I joined, you were talking about the tactical response. So whoever's still listening, yeah, if y'all have the bandwidth and the funds, y'all should go. It was absolutely incredible, and I cannot wait to go again and again and again.
Yeah, we just want to take the class over and over.
Yes.
Yeah. Tactical, anything to share before we go?
Not really.
All right. Chris, it's going well. Good to see you. We pitched your chainsaw class over at originalsoegear.com on June 17th. Guys, if you're interested in that, that is the teacher, and he knows his stuff. Just saying. Check those out. Anyway, we will see you next week. Make it a great week.
See you.